Well, welcome everybody to this segment of Lewis at Large Radio. Yours truly, Warner Lewis, once again from the flight deck. And that, of course, means smart talk radio is in your future. This segment, no exception. Going to talk a little food here. Going to have a good one. Talking to Michelle Dudash. She's an RD. We're going to talk about, I think I know what that means. I think that's registered dietitian, but we're going to find out more about that. Her resume is impressive, and I'm going to let her talk more about herself, which will make her blush, but that's okay. I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. She's an award-winning registered dietitian. She's a cordon bleu certified chef. We'll find out more about that. She's got recipes appearing in Martha Stewart's Whole Living and Better Homes and Gardens. She's also appeared in USA Today, Prevention, MSN.com, Family Circle, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And she is also, she's a graduate of University of Wisconsin in Madison with a degree in dietetics. And she earned her TOQUE from Le Cordon Bleu College of Culinary Arts. My gosh, I've slaughtered it completely. Michelle, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. That's toque. That's the funny tall hat that chefs wear.
Okay. Wow. See, look, if you listen to Lewis at Large, you learn something new every single day. One of the things is you learn the ignorance of the host. But let's talk about... You've put together a work, and you're talking about a subject in clean eating for busy families. And that is a subject that, good gosh, is every day, every home, every block in America. We are busy, and how in the world can we feed our family and make sure that at least part of it is somewhat healthy? And that appears to be exactly what you're tackling here.
Absolutely. And, clean eating. So what that basically encompasses is choosing foods in their whole state, most closest to nature, the least processed. But that doesn't have to mean more time in the kitchen. One of the most important things is planning ahead, thinking about how many meals you're going to be eating at home, and snacks as well.
Yeah, my sense here, clean eating is not necessarily a political diatribe on local and sustainable, although that might be part of it. This is really more, how can we, with what we have, and within the resources that we have, feed our kids in a healthy way.
That is true. And with my approach, and there's, of course, with any eating plan, there's different levels of intensity, and mine really takes into consideration the busy family, and really just the busy person in general who doesn't have time to be slaving over the kitchen for hours. Maybe you're not growing your own garden. If you are, great, but it's really arming you with the information to start eating clean for no matter what level you're currently at.
What do you, as you talk to families around the country and the work that you do, what is one of the misconceptions that a lot of families, and again for this discussion, we'll just say parents, if not mothers, what's the misconception they have about the whole concept of healthy eating for their family?
I find one of the biggest misconception is that it has to be all or nothing. If I messed up for the day, it's over, I ruined it, I didn't cook everything from scratch today, I'm a failure. And that is so not the case. You can incorporate convenience foods into a healthy diet, absolutely. But again, you just have to read the label and make sure it's clean ingredients, it's fruits and vegetables, it's whole grains, it's ingredients you'd find in your kitchen cabinet, not in a lab experiment.
How did you get into the whole work of being a dietitian, and why is food such of interest to you?
Well, Warner, I as a high school student, I was athletic. I was into running, and nutrition never dawned on me. And until I realized, it actually affects how you feel. It affects your performance. And then from there, I was obsessed with cooking, obsessed with recipes, nutrition. My grandmother's the one who told me to go into nutrition. So I got my registered dietitian, went to UW-Madison, and it all went from there. So I'm very passionate about food, and one of my biggest goals is to help people find delicious foods that's also healthy too.
Is again, you're talking about as an athlete that you noticed that it mattered, and I think a lot of people don't realize, what I put into my body genuinely affects how it responds.
It really does. It really does, and of course, with athletic performance, you notice it pretty instantly. But yeah, you think about how you feel eating a drive-through meal versus that's loaded with fat. it's refined carbohydrates, it might be loaded with sugar, versus having a beautiful salad, whole grain, brown rice, some lean protein. Think about how you feel immediately after that. And I think for most of us, it's pretty clear. So when you think of that building effect, so if you do that on a regular basis and you're pretty consistent with it, you will see results. You will feel better. You'll have more energy, and you'll probably sleep better too.
Again, if you just joined us, yours truly, Warner Lewis, from the flight deck of Lewis at Large Radio. We're talking to Michelle Dudash. She is a registered dietitian. For this discussion, we're also talking about a new work by her called Clean Eating for Busy Families, and the ability to make wholesome, nutritious meals quickly and relatively inexpensively. Michelle, let's tackle that one. Another stereotype that many families have is that, boy, if I want to eat healthy, I can't get it off the dollar menu at McDonald's, but there's no dollar menu at the grocery store. It feels like it's going to be pretty pricey.
Yeah, that is another thing I certainly hear. One tip is make sure you choose, and this is where clean eating talks about seasonality. So when fresh fruits and vegetables are in season, that's the best time to purchase them because they're going to be less expensive. They're more abundant. So right now we're seeing you could buy, for example, strawberries in some areas of the country, like where I live in Arizona. You could buy large quantities of them for a lot less than versus if you bought them in January when they're all coming from faraway countries. But also frozen vegetables. Frozen vegetables are very nutritious, very economical. And think about when you go through the drive-through, if you're ordering off the dollar menu, that's one thing. But you're going to pay for it now, or you're going to pay for it later when you're going to the doctor. You're getting surgery. You're paying for medications. So you really need to think about the long term.
What about let's talk about that because. And I can't believe we're talking about frozen peas right now on our show, but that's fine. Let's take a consumer. They're rushed. They go through the grocery store. They go, gosh, I want to do what Michelle says to do, but I can't do it all completely fresh. They pick up a box of frozen peas. Is there a way to make frozen vegetables either more nutritious or to not lose any nutrition from it in how you prepare it?
Mm-hmm. Well, frozen vegetables are actually about the same, or sometimes they're even more nutritious than their fresh counterparts because they're picked and they're immediately blanched and they're immediately frozen. So the nutrients are often, they're preserved. So nutritionally, and of course the fiber's still in there. Certain nutrients go down, certain nutrients remain the same. So nutritionally, you're doing very well. Now, as far as taste, I think just cooking them properly, not overcooking them, cooking them in a small quantity of water prevents, instead of a large, vat of boiling water, it's going to prevent nutrients from leaching out into the water. So I would say microwave them. It's a great way to preserve the nutrients. Just put a small amount of water in the package, or you can steam them. Those are my two favorites.
So microwaving does, in fact, not hurt them, in your opinion?
Correct.
Okay. What about, let's talk about, again, the rest, this piece that you did, Clean Eating for Busy Families, loaded with recipes, probably millions you could have chosen from. Any particular, what do these recipes necessarily have in common?
Well, I compiled a mom panel. And so they, first of all, before a recipe even made it into the book, they said, yes, I love the sound of that. No, this is not something my family would eat. So that was the first thing. Then they tested the recipes that I created, and they provided feedback. So they're really tested by families. They're tested by real families, real moms and dads, real kids. And that was that was very helpful and very eye-opening to see. And then the other thing is the kinds of foods that people want to buy, too. So you're going to find tons of chicken recipes. You're going to find new ways to use seafood. I know a lot of people want to use seafood, but they're not sure how to cook it. And it's actually quite simple. And the key is not to overcook it, actually. Fish doesn't get more tender with more cooking. It's already tender. Just don't overcook it. And then there's also side dishes. There's plenty of salads that you can make a big batch for the week and enjoy when you're at work.
Michelle, what about, I'm diving into the book here just a little bit, but one of the things that I know has worked as a substitute before, and that is the whole concept of mashed cauliflower versus mashed potatoes. Share with us a little bit maybe how to prepare cauliflowers to feel and taste like mashed potatoes.
Sure. Well, and the main principle here is, potatoes are actually a nutrient-rich food. They're just, of course, we love to eat a lot of mashed potatoes, right? So when you replace some of the cauliflower with a large portion of the potatoes, you're reducing the calories, you're reducing the starch content, but you're adding also new nutrients from the cauliflower. So you have your steamed potatoes, your boiled potatoes, you have your steamed cauliflower. You puree them. You just whip out a food processor, or if you could mash them with a potato masher. And then I add some seasonings. I add some garlic, and I add some milk, and I add some buttery spread, and that's going to really replicate the taste you get from regular mashed potatoes. And I've fooled many people, and the calories are slashed.
Yes, indeed. What about, let's tackle this one. From your perspective, again, you are a registered dietitian. But you're also called upon to make sure that those healthy meals taste exceptional. What about the whole subject in general of red meat? Do you come down one way or the other on that, or tell us about that?
Well, yeah, there's a few things to consider. First of all, I think red meat, well, it's not what I think. Red meat does have good nutrients. It contains protein, it contains B vitamins, it contains iron. Those are all very good nutrients, but not all red meat is created equal. So what you want to look for is leaner cuts. So if you're choosing beef, you want to choose basically you can look at it and see, is it very marbled? That's going to have a higher saturated fat content. We want the leaner cuts like flank steak or sirloin, pork tenderloin, or pork chops are leaner cuts. When it comes to lamb loin or lamb chops, those are going to be leaner cuts. So it's about one of the reasons it tends to get a bad rap is because of that saturated fat, but they're not all that high in saturated fat. So just read the label, watch out for marbling in the meat.
All right, let's talk about the subject of desserts.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about healthy desserts.
Well, when it comes to dessert, again, when you look at what's in a regular dessert that we want to watch out for, it's again the saturated fat, the butter, and all the added sugar. So what I do is replace a lot of the butter with healthy oils, like canola oil, for example. I look for ways to incorporate whole grains, like whole grain flours, oats. When I'm making a crust, instead of using butter and white flour, I might incorporate pecans in the crust. I might incorporate whole grain flour, canola oil. So you're getting rid of the bad stuff and you're adding the good stuff. And then, of course, anytime you can add fruit to a dessert, all the better, because fruit is loaded with nutrients, and most of us aren't getting enough fruit anyway. So those are some of the techniques I use. For example, I have a fruit pizza in my cookbook. It has a whole grain crust, it's loaded with beautiful, fresh, seasonal fruits. So it's a great thing you could make a big batch of, bring it to a party. The whole family will love it. My daughter devours it, actually, for breakfast.
Now, you have the luxury of living in a wonderful spot in Arizona. I guess that's a luxury. But yeah, most people would think so. But anyway, some of our listeners may say, you know what? You live in Arizona. You've probably got all kinds of fresh fruits and vegetables all the time in the middle of the country. In the dead of winter, it's really hard to get a hold of some of that stuff. What do you say to that?
Well, those people do have a good point. But at the same time, when it comes to winter, our produce here is still coming from, a lot of the produce is coming from faraway countries. And that's not the stuff that would really be on the top of my list anyway. So in the book, I offer seasonal substitutions. For example, there's a delicious fish taco recipe that in the summertime you'd make with a tomato pico de gallo. But in the wintertime, tomatoes are not optimal, right? So I have substitutions like using grapefruit or using oranges in the pico de gallo or another seasonal fruit in the wintertime that you can use in place of those. So there's lots of those substitutions. And I even include substitutions for frozen vegetables as well, when you can't get your hands on the fresh or bottled, like jarred bell peppers in the wintertime instead of those fresh bell peppers we're going to find in the summertime.
What about this whole issue, Michelle? Working families, time, everyone gets home at 6:30, they're exhausted. Oh gosh, Michelle's recipes are wonderful, but they feel like they take a lot of time and energy. What can we do to make sure that do you feel these are just as efficient as others?
Oh, most of the recipes in my book are actually, you can have them ready in 30 minutes or less. So the time is really, so I guess it depends. If you think 30 minutes is too long, well, yeah. That's from start to finish. But there's also slow cooker recipes. You can, again, it takes less than 30 minutes to prep, throw them in your crock pot, and when you come home, you have this delicious, fresh, homemade meal. So time, all of these recipes, again, they've been tested on busy families, and I'm a busy family myself. So these are recipes that I make for my own family, too. So they're very streamlined. And I even take into consideration pans. Who wants to be washing piles of pans and dishes at the end of the night? So I really try to streamline the whole process and use one-pot meals, too. That saves you time as well. Any
particular advice, Michelle, for our listeners about kids and fresh food? I mean, it seems like they would go hand in hand, but sometimes they're in conflict.
Well, kids and fresh food, I think you just, it's first of all, start at an early age. Get them used to seeing those foods. Get them used to the texture and the juiciness. I mean, I could tell you my daughter, she's like any other kid. She loves cheesy butter crackers, but she also loves hummus and edamame and fresh fruit. So I think, as parents, you need to set limits. You need to keep those foods available for them. But also, even if it's not fresh, like in the wintertime, keep the applesauce on hand, keep the frozen fruit on hand, keep things that, and also keep in mind, it can take 8 to 10 exposures before a kid even decides if they'll try a fruit or vegetable.
Yep.
So just be persistent and don't give up. Don't give up based on 1 or 2 times of trying. You'll never know. They surprise you.
Well, kind of hand in hand, too, with all this whole concept of eating fresh is the world of green and the environment. And there's several tips in there and advantages that you point out. Just overall talk about that subject.
Yeah, it's when we're talking about being green, it's considering the environment, and it's considering, again, the seasonality. So when something's in season, it's coming from, ideally we want to find foods that are domestically made in our country, so they're not traveling as far. When they're not traveling as far, that's less of an impact on the environment. So we talk about seasonality, but also using ways to use leftovers. Anytime we're throwing away food, we're throwing away resources, we're throwing away energy. So one tip is, for example, using up, if you have that bag of whole grain tortilla chips in your pantry and it's the bottom of the bag, the crumbs, you can use those for a delicious coating on tilapia. So that's one example. So those types of tips are actually weaved throughout the book in little sidebars in each recipe. So you can really just jump right into the book and just start cooking. But you're also learning little pieces along the way. So all of that knowledge builds up, and before you know it, you're an expert.
Well, we are heading towards, at least in the Midwest anyway, outdoor barbecue season. Is there a particular barbecue recipe or barbecue meal that you're particularly fond of?
Oh, yes. There are a few in there. One of them is, these are great. I grew up in Wisconsin, right? And I remember one thing my dad used to do is these packets, the aluminum foil packets. They'd have potatoes or chicken. So I came up with a newer version with chicken breast and thinly sliced potatoes, thinly sliced red bell peppers. You put it in these foil packets. Of course, I add some seasonings to it, and then you just pop them on the grill. Everyone gets their own little pouch. It's a complete meal with 3 different food groups. So that's definitely one of my favorites.
Okay, getting kind of hungry just talking about this. The work is Clean Eating for Busy Families, and it is published by Fairwinds Press. Michelle Dudash, a registered dietitian, but you've seen her work in everything from Martha Stewart and much, much more, MSN, et cetera, et cetera. Hey, Michelle, how can people not only find out a little bit more about you, find out about the book, get a copy of the book, and also just find out more about clean eating in general?
Yes, well, definitely check out my website. It's michelledudash.com. You'll find info on where to get the book. I post a weekly recipe, so there's free recipes. There's plenty of tips, and feel free to get in touch as well.
Well, thank you so much for spending time with us, and enjoy the American Southwest, and thanks again for sharing these recipes, and look forward to maybe talking to you again in the future.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Warner.
You
Take
bet.
care.
We will be back with more right after this on Lewis at Large.